We'd like to thank Mainspring Companies for sponsoring Season 1 of The Next Entrepreneur. Mainspring celebrates the entrepreneurial journey, and we are very grateful for their support.
I got my MBA in 96, and I started working with Mr. Allen. About halfway through, I got my MBA. Now, he was a man, I think it depended on which story he was telling, but he either finished 6th or 7th or 8th grade. So he treated higher education as kind of like just in the way of work. So I think I graduated maybe second to last in my MBA class because I was working all the time with him. And actually, the guy that graduated last lives in the same subdivision I do. So we joke about that. I think I was 109, he was 110 out of the 110 students. But I was working the whole time when I got my MBA. And I got a really, University of Hard Knocks was a little bit more interesting than the MBA was.
Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. I am here today with our producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions. Daniel, thank you for the great job that Propel is doing for the Next Entrepreneur podcast. And our guest today, very excited to introduce Mr. Saun Sullivan, CEO with DSLD Homes. Saun, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So Saun is, as I said, CEO at DSLD. They're largest privately held home builder in the region and one of the top 30 home builders in the U.S.
Yes, that's right.
Fantastic success of your story. So, Saun, I was wondering if we could start off by you telling us about DSLD today, where you guys are, your geographic reach, and some of the info like that.
Sure. We're in about 5 states right now. We do about 3,500 houses a year. So we're in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. We're in 12 markets, which includes Orange, Texas, and Lake Charles, which hopefully will survive this hurricane we'll see in about a day and a half. We're in Shreveport, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, home of Thibodaux, North Shore of New Orleans, West Bank of New Orleans, Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, and Huntsville. And pretty soon we're going to be in Freeport, Florida. So that's our next market.
That'll be number 13?
That'll be number 13, depending on how you treat the markets. Some of the people treat New Orleans as one market, some of them treat it as 2, so depending on how you treat those markets.
So you have a new headquarter building here in Baton Rouge where you consolidated a few offices, right? But do you have offices in all of those markets that
Yes,
you just mentioned?
We have offices, either mortgage and title or production, and pretty well everywhere we build. Some of them go from our bigger office here in Baton Rouge, and some of them are about the size of an outhouse. But, you know, we try to have an office wherever we're building to meet and everything like that.
So you do certain back house operations here, like, for example, your payables and payroll. Is that happening in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, all accounting happens in Baton Rouge. All of the title management happens. A lot of the mortgages in Baton Rouge. In Denham Springs, at our other larger office, we have the production admin happening there. Warranty gets handled out of there as far as the call-ins, and marketing gets handled there.
So how many employees do you have now?
Currently, we're about 434 employees as we speak.
And how does that split? How do those numbers split between admin or office and then field?
Probably 2/3 are in the field in some form or fashion, and 1/3 are in the back office positions.
And your homes that you build you're using a base of subcontractors, right? So your field personnel are they're job superintendent type individuals. What other type classification?
You got job supers, you got the salespeople out there. The salespeople work for us to work with the realtors. You've got mortgage processors, you've got mortgage originators, you've got title people, you've got you've got the accounting folks. You got a little bit of everything out there.
So, how would you define, if this is even possible, the DSLD product?
I mean, the product is mostly for first time and move up and maybe move down. So we're not a custom builder. We make all the changes up front, and we offer some options in the plans, but we're not a custom builder. So we try to plan the house for you the Mr. Allen used to always say a 6-year-old kid could build a house with an unlimited budget and a phone book. Of course, there's no phone books anymore, but he said a 6-year-old, if they didn't run out of money. So what we try to do is we try to, any business solves a problem. We solve the problem of shelter. So we produce the houses so that the people don't have to get involved in the project. And, it's one of those things everybody thinks, hey, it'd be fun to do a custom house until they do a custom house. Right. And usually, at the end, I used to have a trim guy who said, I can build anything in the world if I don't run out of money, time, and patience. Well, at the end of the job, every time with him, I was out of money, time, and patience. So we try to take that factor out of there. And, we produce for first time, move down, move up, but we don't play in the custom model. And we tend to be a little lower price point than most. Our average price is about $220,000. So, a combined family income of about 60 or 70. It's all it's take to buy one of our products.
So affordable quality seems to be your hallmark.
There's a misnomer that, the custom guys do things with more quality than we, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, every time we do a house for ourselves, we think, by God, it would have been easier for us to buy one of our townhomes. They're better built than, because one of the things you don't learn when you do something once, it's like Toyota when they do the first car. The first car is probably horrific. The 10,000th car is probably pretty well put together, but anytime you do something once, it doesn't give you a chance to learn. So, with sports or anything in the world, if you just do it once, you don't get to learn. So we've done the houses over and over again, and it allows us to get all the kinks out at the beginning, whether it's plans or, something in the thing, and that's what allows us to have the quality, and it's the same trades over and over again. So we're really funny about the quality of the houses.
So standardization is helping affordability and quality.
Agreed.
Right. But you also have a strong focus on energy efficiency in your homes, right?
Yeah. Anything we build now has got an energy efficiency of about 75 compared to 100 for kind of an existing house that you could build to a new house, and about 125 standard for something that's been out there for a while. So most people don't know what their utility bill is, but if you buy a 30-year-old house, you're probably paying double the utility bill you'd pay for one of our houses. So wow. It's pretty dramatic.
So you're a home builder, but you also you mentioned mortgages. Can you tell us, and can you talk about that part of your business and when that came on in the history of your company? And then are you doing something with insurance as well?
We have an insurance company, we have a title company, we have a mortgage company. So what we try to do is take all the headaches out of the process. So, you've got to go get a mortgage company, you've got to select a title company, you've got to go find insurance, you've got to do all this sort of thing. So what we try to do is make it a one-stop shop to where, it takes the headache out from the homeowner, where we're talking about all the problems with the homeowner doesn't even have to see it. So, we deal with that for them. So that's the benefit we provide.
But how do you start a mortgage company? I mean, you're
you tabletop fund at the beginning, and now we become a mortgage banker thing. So we fund our own stuff, and then we sell them on in a 2 or 3 week period. So it's definitely one of those things. You need to get to about 200 or 300 houses a year before the title and the mortgage start to make sense. So it's one of those things that you do get with volume. But once you get it across the system for the 3,500, we're able to do it. And, the people take us up on the mortgage part about 65% of the time, and they take us up on the title part about 99% of the time, and they take us up about insurance about 50% of the time.
That's amazing numbers.
Yeah, so it's good numbers. But we try to provide that service. So it's not like, hey, you've got to use this. We say that the different departments are customers of each other. So if we feel like, hey, title's not being a good customer of mortgage, or mortgage is not being a good customer of production or sales, then we try to meet with the managers and say, all right, these people are getting this rub and this bad experience. How do we correct this? One of the big things with mortgage now is literally the amount of paperwork we need to do that. So we try to make that as minimal as possible on the people, and you try to explain the situation to them. It's kind of like the Disney rides. If you tell them how long they're going to wait, it's a lot better than saying, hey, you get in a line and maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 3 hours. If you say, look, you jump in this line, it's 45 minutes, and you get them in there at 40 minutes, everything's pretty well okay. Yeah. Setting the expectations is very important.
The mortgage closing process is just amazing how much paperwork can be generated from that, but there's so much regulation and so much, that has to be done. But I did want to kind of so that's who you are today, a massive operation, including all those services and all those employees across the states. And let me ask this one last question while we're on that. How many communities are you building in right now?
About 110. And one of the things unique to DSLD is we don't develop our own lots. Like, we come from a lot development background. It's actually where I got my start. But we don't develop, so we buy from local developers, and we buy from any area that we're in. It's mostly local trades doing all the stuff. So a lot of people think that you get a production builder, either national or semi-national like us, and they come in and bring their own people. That's not true. Most of the time, it's local people that we're using. It's a local plumber. I mean, we can't drive a plumber up to Huntsville. It's 6 hours away to do a job. So It's all the local guys. What we do with them is we schedule them correctly. We pay them within 2 days, and then we tell them all the standards, and we really help the process. So it's all local trades that do that.
Yeah, that is interesting. So you're a University of Colorado grad.
Yep, I went to Colorado before it was weed. The weed was bought in front of the store when I was there. It wasn't bought in the store. So you actually didn't, there was a guy standing in front that wasn't actually in the store. Now, it's still, at the time, it was one of those things that, in the dorms, you got kicked out for having alcohol, but they would confiscate the weed, which was even at the time where it was supposedly illegal. So, I went out to Boulder, which was about the most left-wing liberal place as compared to Berkeley at the time. And nothing to make a free market capitalist than to live out there for a little while.
And what was your undergraduate degree in?
My degree was actually in philosophy. So, I never had the background of, I got into, my grandfather had been in real estate development, and that's how I met my senior partner, Mr. Alan Thomason, through my grandfather. They were friends. So,
I see.
Yeah, so they had done some work back and forth, and that's how I met. But I got my MBA in 96, and I started working with Mr. Allen. About halfway through, I got my MBA. Now, he was a man, I think it depended on which story he was telling, but he either finished 6th or 7th or 8th grade. So he treated higher education as kind of like just in the way of work. So I think I graduated maybe second to last in my MBA class because I was working all the time with him. And actually, the guy that graduated last lives in the same subdivision I do. So we joke about that. I think I was 109, he was 110. Out of the 110 students, but I was working the whole time when I got my MBA, and I got University of Hard Knocks was a little bit more interesting than the MBA was.
And what was the work that Mr. Thompson was doing at that time?
We did lot development and land development. So we buy a piece of land, cut it up into lots, and sell it to builders. And that was the process at the time. And at some point, he said, "Look, we got to get into the housing production thing." But he told our other partner, Jeff, and I, "Don't hurt your heads. There's people in Dallas that build 3,000 houses a year. Go steal whatever they're doing over there. Go steal all their ideas." And, he had done houses when he got out of Korea, but it was one of those things that back in the day, and it was always the story is they poured 5 slabs a day, and you couldn't start a fire with the building material. So it was always back in the day stuff. Yeah. And he'd say, "Go study Centex over there." And we go study Centex, and we're like, I don't know, they're a lot worse than when you started there, because I could see all kind of trash, and nobody does 5 slabs a day and all that sort of stuff. So we started that process in 2000 of both developing our own subdivisions and building the houses. And I think we did maybe 70 houses the first year in 2000 and just started building it up from there.
So at what point did you become a partner with?
From the very beginning. I mean, his version is if I did most of the work and he kept most of the money on our venture, he was fine with it. And he created a lot of partners over the years. He really did. He created a lot of opportunities for people, that invested in them and started the process. So I mean, that was a version, because I didn't have access to banks or any of that sort of stuff. And he was always both a mentor and kind of like guardrails. He'd keep me out of the ditches, and
so he was 40 years older than you.
Yeah, about 40 years
older
than me.
So was he bringing on this young buck to someone who could prolong his business life and someone who would do the work, and that way he could stay in the game?
He did, but he did a lot of stuff. The housing part of it wasn't as interesting to him as the land development. He really liked the heavy construction part of that. That was really kind of what so he would mostly concentrate on that while I would concentrate on the housing thing. So it really wasn't more of a succession. It was more of a, hey, you do this, I'll do that. And, that's how we made it work.
So with a philosophy degree and an MBA from Tulane, how did you like land development when you first started working with him?
I mean, it was a little adjustment shock because, you go in front of the council meetings and, the council meeting in front of y'all is somebody's dog with somebody else's dog and, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, it's one of the things about me is there's a certain amount of humility necessarily in the business. You do what you need to do in the business as of that day. I mean, Sunday I was picking up trash with our other partner in front of the hurricane. We both had shovels and trying to figure out a pipe that was had a little bit too much stuff with it. So it's one of the things is you don't feel like you get to a part where you can't throw in and help out the situation. And he was very similar to that, I mean, regardless of how much he had at the time, if somebody called him, he always took a meeting. He'd always talk to somebody. I mean, just anybody. If you called him for life insurance, he'd talk to you. I mean, I don't know that I heard of that he'd ever not returned a call. Yeah. He was just one of those people.
Yeah. That is not always the case today.
Really, really, really not.
And so how long was it from the time you started working with him before you started going vertical with your own homes?
It was 5 years. We did 5 years of land development. Then we did about 6 years of the home construction and land development before we sold the business to D.R. Horton in 2006.
So you were... did I read this correctly? Once you started going vertical with the homes, you were kind of trying to create a more steady flow for your lot sales. And I mean, so prior to that, let me say it this way, prior to Katrina, let's say, we really didn't have a regional or national home builder company of any significance in Louisiana from my memory. Is that's
correct? Right? I mean, they had Signature down here. Dwight was doing some houses larger than us. United Homes would do some occasional stuff, but actually this is where way back in the day in the 50s, General Homes was out of here. So Baton Rouge in the 50s and 60s had some production home builders. They went back to Texas where there was more permits at the time, but we had on and off some production home buildings in the process. But
okay.
We started again, but it wasn't. We didn't revolutionize the industry by being production. We just did what people have been doing since after World War II with Levittown and Fox and Jacobs and the gang.
Right. So so by 2000. So at what year then are you starting to build again, going vertical?
2000 to 2006 is when we built that organization up, and then we sold it to a national concern, D.R. Horton, on the heels of Katrina.
So Katrina comes in. The world thinks that New Orleans is done initially and that everyone's going to move to Baton Rouge. And so that got the attention of the regional and national builders, right? And that's why Horton came knocking on your door.
Yes. I mean, we were doing about 400 or 500 a year and, could do land development. So they said, hey, you guys go back to where your roots were in land development, develop for us, and we'll build the houses, which, honestly at the time sounded okay because, we were exhausted. It was right after Katrina. It was after that. So we were in a position. Plus, Mr. Allen had gotten to an age where, he was having a few health issues and everything like that. So we, it was a good time in the marketplace. We thought at the time to, look at an exit for a little while and just go back to land development for a little while.
So they made you an offer you couldn't refuse, right? And
yeah, I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't Google money by any means, but I mean, right. It was enough at the time to, when the market fell again. See, right after that, what happened in Baton Rouge was very different than what happened nationwide. Nationwide house prices exploded. So your Arizona, your California, your Florida, the house prices were going up 10% a year, and we kept saying, why can't we make the same money all these other builders are making? Well, yeah, if your product goes up 10% a year. So it never rose that much here, so it never fell that much. So you had the down cycle. Now you had a little bit of craziness. You had doctors, lawyers, some dentists all developing subdivisions around Baton Rouge at the time thinking, hey, everybody from New Orleans is going to leave and come up here to Baton Rouge. Well, if you're from New Orleans, you're from New Orleans. We don't have the right bread. The Saints aren't up here. They don't like the beignets. They can't get a drink at 2:30 at night. So, I mean, you got all kind of issues of trying to merge those two cultures together. So most of them kind of went back, which we thought would happen, but I mean, we kind of saw that. So there was, when '08 happened, the national crash happened, Horton kind of quit buying lots from us and left us with a bunch of lots, and we figured, we've got to build these things out. And plus there was some deals happening. A lot of the banks had lent money to people that were having some issues with lots, and a lot of them became our developers for a long time. And we went to them, and what Mr. Allen did back in the 90s, the RTC crashes, he bought lots just at the RTC days, for pennies on the dollar. We didn't get that opportunity as much because we were buying them to use them. So we knew the guy couldn't develop the next filing if he couldn't develop this filing for us. So, we cut a decent deal with a lot of people and helped a lot of developers out, and they've been developing for us ever since. So when we started back in '08, and I think did about 70 houses that first year.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess another thing that was going on during that time with the price escalation, there was a lot of movement in commodities back then, and China was just, growing at 6 or 8 or 10% a year, it seems like. And I mean, prices of copper and cement and everything was going through the roof and had an impact across the board.
It really was. And the Chinese gave us a Chinese drywall, which was, still to this day, you just mention Chinese drywall down here and somebody will break out in hives, So,
Exactly.
I mean, it's one of those break the company type things.
Yeah, well, which was a supply and demand thing, which that's kind of a vicious circle. I don't want to get off on that. But I mean, the demand for drywall was so great that, they're going to ship it from overseas, right?
I agree.
But, Saun, let's take a quick break right there, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. MBD Maintenance is a proud sponsor for the Next Entrepreneur podcast, and we greatly appreciate their support. MBD Maintenance is a commercial building and maintenance contractor. They will build your commercial building, maintain it. They do additions, remodeling, tenant improvements. If you need MBD Maintenance for your commercial building needs, you can find them online at mbdmaintenance.com. And we are back with Mr. Saun Sullivan, CEO of DSLD Homes. So by 2006, you're building about 500 homes a year. And your home building entity is Provident Homes. That's the correct company that you ultimately sold.
Yes, that's correct. And we're building just in Livingston Parish, Ascension Parish, and just a small slither of East Baton Rouge. So we're really a predominant Livingston Parish, Ascension Parish. You could drive the whole system in 20 minutes. Now it takes 20 minutes, to get from one sub to the other. So you were really hammering some product in that market. That's a lot of homes. Yeah, there's two markets.
So D.R. Horton approached you at that time. Walk us through that.
Yeah, they called us, and we were at Shoney's, of course. Mr. Allen loves Shoney's for some reason. I mean, it was the buffet at Shoney's was like his Ruth Chris. So I'm in the buffet line, and we get a call from Rick Horton. He says, "We run a really tight ship. Do you want to meet us at this steakhouse?" I was like, "Tight ship? Hell, I'm in the buffet line at Shoney's here, and he probably won't buy the side salad for me." So we met and discussed it back and forth, and they were literally trying to get from 50,000 houses to 100,000 houses. So that was their goal, as a company, to do that right in front of the car. So we negotiated on about 2 or 3 months, and finally signed an agreement on Christmas Eve. That would be 2005, and it took us about 3 or 4 months to finally get it closed. And it was a literally 3-day closing down in New Orleans. I think they had at least 20 lawyers on it. We had one, Linda Clark, who was amazing, and all of us slept about 2 hours during that whole period. And Mr. Allen came down the second day, and we were supposed to have everything ready for him to sign, and of course we didn't. It was a thing. And what he told us was, he's like, "Look, at some point in here, they're going to retrade this deal. Y'all got to decide what number y'all are going to accept." And, I was like, Mr. Allen, we've negotiated this. This is all done. I don't know why you think that. And he kind of laughed and smiled and kind of chuckled. And he said, all right, just in case that they try to do that. Within an hour, what he predicted had happened would happen. And he just looks over at Jeff and I and smiles and says, well, it's up to you guys. And, he had the mentality. He was in Korea and came close to being killed in Korea. As an Army person several times. And after that, you really didn't see fear on him. Like he didn't, he get aggravated, all your normal stuff, mostly inefficiencies, but you really never saw him like get fearful of anything in his thing. And he was just like, whatever happens. If y'all want to sell it, we'll sell it. If not, we'll get in the car in New Orleans and drive on home. So,
they had a price set.
Yeah, they had a price set, but
last minute they
changed it. And right after that, I go to the doctor and I was like, I've got this weird rash, and they're like, that's called shingles. I was like, nah, that's what I put on houses. They're like, no, that's a stress disease. Have you been under any stress? I was like, just a tad. So, we finally get that sold and so got back into land development at that point for a thing, and then the crash happened. So we started. So one of the big things I did in 06, 07, and 08.
So the crash being the 2008
crash when housing just went to nothing. I mean, right. The housing nationwide went down 30%. Baton Rouge went down, didn't go down in home prices, but permits declined about 40%. And places like Atlanta declined 90%. So, it was a very bad time to be in housing at the time. It probably would have been a good time to short houses like some of the guys did, but we didn't have enough sense at the time to do that. So we started buying some subdivisions, still developing some subdivisions. And what we did was we went out and studied a bunch of builders nationwide. And we were okay as a builder, but we couldn't compete with some of the nationals of that. So we went out and literally studied all these different builders. We must have visited 50 different builders, and they didn't have anything to do, so they were happy to talk to us. So we just basically spent a year and a half stealing ideas, and that's where Even Flow came from, and that's where the QC process came from. So we took all that stuff together, and then when we started back DSLD in 08, had a really good feel for, hey, what is the best practices out of there? And that's one of the things that's really helped us since then is that we haven't deviated then from the 08, the stuff that we had to do in 08 when we were just brand new, we still do now.
So when that crash happened, your home builder that you're selling the lots to, they start to bug out.
Yeah,
right?
they don't buy any lots. And, the lot only has one use to build a house on it. I mean, You can't grow anything on it. It has no use but to build a house. So when you lose your buyer, it's kind of like being at the grocery store and closing the doors. Nobody, you got to bring people in there. So you've got no customer, you've got no sales. So we knew we'd have to build those out.
Yeah. So that sounds a little stressful.
Yeah.
So, but it was amazing to see how you were able to take from 2008, and by 2011, you're the America's fastest growing home builder and the professional builder of the year. 2012, you're America best builder. I mean, you guys got to it fast, huh?
We did what we kind of had to. So, I mean, it's kind of like if you're doing a nice little stroll jog, you run at one pace. If someone's chasing you with a knife, you run a little faster. So we kind of felt like, I forget what quote it is, but the option of hanging tomorrow focuses the mind wonderfully. So, I mean, we really kind of felt like once we jumped back in, I mean, we were competing with people with $1 billion on the balance sheet. So, I mean, we had to do things better, or faster and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it really was one of those ones that we felt like we had to get up quick to use the lot supply and get some scale and kind of it worked out.
So you began to create your brand, the DSLD model. And so tell us what Even Flow is.
So basically, if you start 5 houses a week, most builders will start, them all on Monday or all on Friday. We basically start a house a day in a market where we do 5. So every day we start kind of an even number and we finish an even number, and all the trades know where they have to be at any given time. So it's kind of like a hose. Like if you want a certain amount of water through a hose, wherever the hose is the smallest controls the flow of water. So what we watch these other builders do is start past their production capacity. And, there's no way to do that. So it's kind of like if I go to a restaurant and I say, give me 21 meals, I'm going to eat them all now, and I won't have to eat for the week. Well, one, I can't eat 21 meals. Two, even if I could, I'm still going to be hungry maybe 3 days from now. So, I mean, it's just the scheduling of it. We treat it kind of like a factory that goes outside. So we make sure that the production capacity can match in kind of an even cadence of what they can do, because in Lee Foster, one of our COO, does a really good job of getting in their system and figuring out, all right, if we want to go from 5 starts a week, everybody's got to do 20% more. We've got to have another super, another sales. The plumber needs another truck. He might need a hand. So he does a really good job. Like, he'll sit down with the people and say, all right, for us to go to 5 to 6, where's this 20% addition coming from with you? Where are you going to go? And we try to grow the same people larger, and sometimes we have to bring in new subs when somebody reaches their capacity. But, I mean, we do a good job of trying to meet with the trades, and the trades are the same guys over and over again. We're very loyal to the people that we do business with, and we pay them within 2 days, so they show that loyalty back. And, like today or a few days from now, there'll be that hurricane in Lake Charles. It'll do some damage, and our guys won't go out chase it because they know they've got our work, and we'll be with them for the next 10 years, and that allows us to have that loyalty.
Yeah, that's strong. So at what point in DSLD did you then begin to lose the land development component and just focus on home building?
Almost immediately. I mean, we weren't doing a lot of land development after '08 because there wasn't a need. There was excess lots on the marketplace. Right. So we felt like that. And then once we got into these other markets, we're like, all right, which part do we want to do? Do we want to do the land development part, which requires some local knowledge, local contacts, and everything like that? So what we provide our land developers is, a full faith agreement that we take the lots. And that's really kind of what we're known for, is that if we say we're going to take 61 lots on December 24th of 2026, on December 24th of 2026, we take those lots. I mean, that's really one of the basic things about us, is we never walk on the deal on them, and that allows them to have security in the marketplace, because we were on the other side of that. When you don't know whether someone will take the product, it creates all sorts of stress in the system. It's kind of like a T-bill right now, is going for about 56 basis points. Money that you lend to an idiot brother-in-law, hell, you need to make 80% on that because he probably won't pay you back. So, I mean, we want to be closer to the T-bill than the idiot brother-in-law rate. So that's kind of how we look at the world, is if people can know what we're going to do and know that we're good for the deal, we get a much better price.
So by comparison, you have a one-pager contract with your land developers. There is some risk there.
Yeah, there's some
on
risk
both
there.
sides.
Well, maybe. I mean, really more on our side. I mean, more than theirs. I mean, their risk is probably they can't do the lot for that price. Our risk is that we absolutely have to take it, which we will do. What we always do is, if we say we're going to take a lot, we take a lot.
But by contrast, conventional land development lots are going to be far more complex. A 20 or 30 page contract,
if you're lucky, yeah,
and
50 mostly.
And there's all sorts of outs, right?
Yeah.
And so for the you're making a commitment to the land developer who's now providing you a pipeline of lots that you need to hold up your pipeline of home building, and you become a more attractive builder to sell to.
Exactly. I mean, we're only as good as our last deal, our last house. I mean, we it's just like COVID. When COVID hit, all these guys were calling and saying, hey, what's happening? I was like, what's happening is we're taking exactly the lots we said we were taking before from you. So, this didn't change anything. In a downturn, we're taking the lots that we told you we would take. So our big thing is if you do that, you get the first look, and you get the first look at a lot of deals, and then people get comfortable with you, and then they'll go out and develop in other areas for you. And that's how we treat the developers, and how we treat our suppliers is, if we form some sort of partnership, it's kind of like if you and your spouse decide to, argue about who's going to take the trash out every day, and then you take it out and she won't take it out. I mean, it's that kind of thing. Let's figure out who's supposed to do what, and then let's do it every day.
Right. So defining those responsibilities and, a clear quality standard for your subs is something that y'all do very well and take a lot of time in implementing that plan. Schedule is also one of your strong suits. I mean, you guys got the process down to a science, and I don't know what your number is today, but at some point it was 50 days, and now maybe 42 days.
43 work days from when we drop a frame, we finish in Baton Rouge. It's a little bit longer in some other areas, but it's 43 days. But, you even think about that. I mean, everybody gets impressed with that. To us, it's not that impressive because they can build a house in 3 days. Like if you don't run out of money, time, and patience, you can do a house in whatever time frame. But like if you literally did not have a budget, I could deliver a house in a day without a budget. Now, nobody would want to live in it and nobody could afford to live in it, but I can do a house in a day. It's physically possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we try to balance that, what it costs versus the adequate thing. But even with a 43 work day schedule, nobody's on the job almost 60 to 70% of the time. Nobody's physically there if you drive by it. So it's not, that seems impressive, but, I mean, a lot of times that's not dramatically from what can be done.
So talk about your subcontractor management, particularly the grading system that you use.
Yeah, there's checklists for everything. So we do, we're kind of like pilots. Pilots have a checklist for whatever happens. When you get in a plane, check the fuel, check the odometer, check everything like that. So we do the same thing with our trades, is that they can look on the checklist, and the super gets that same checklist and grades them of how they're doing in the system. So each week, let's say you're doing flooring for us, you get a score of how your guys did and how many deficiencies you have. So, he doesn't make money by sending people back multiple times. He makes money by showing up, doing it right, and leaving. So he could see, X crew had this many problems with the tile and had to come back twice, and this crew did that. So it allows them to not drive every job site that they're doing for us and get that information. So that's really what we're big on, is that inspection list and that QC list, and just the standardization. It's kind of like we decide one way to do things and then we do it across the system. So there's one way to wrap a window. It's kind of like McDonald's fries. Yeah. The fries taste the same wherever you are. Key West to Anchorage to Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, the fries taste the same. So we like to say that we try to do our construction details the same way.
So they're not. So if I read this correctly, you have a subcontractor, let's say, a tape and floater will come back and judge the quality of the sheetrock hanging job.
Yeah, they get to discuss the previous guy's stuff.
Yeah, and so, but also it's not just the quality, but it's also the cleanliness of the job, right?
Yeah. I mean, people associate cleanliness with quality, and I do all the time too. The cleaner the job site is, the more I less look at things. I mean, if there's Coke bottles and wrappers and everything like that and material out there, I was like, this is a worse job, because they associate that with quality, which anybody would. I mean, if you go buy a new car and you open it up and there's a bunch of McDonald's bags in the floorboard, I was like, wait, this is a new car. I mean, what's a used car look like around here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really kind of what we push, is the cleanliness. Plus, in a storm situation like what we've got today, it's a lot easier. You don't have stuff blowing around and all that sort of stuff. Plus, it's unsafe to have everything out there, and noisy neighbors to have all the wrappers kind of blow over in their yard and everything like that.
But these very things that we've been talking about the last few minutes really define your whole business.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
And you mentioned earlier that quick payment with subcontractors and keeping them fed.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And so how do you do that?
We just, every day in the system, a completion report gets done, and that's every job that got finished. And that's the super said that, let's say the brick got delivered. So within 2 days, we send that brick guy that payment into a direct deposit into his account. They don't send us any invoices back to us. We send him a purchase order when the job starts, and as soon as that item is done, he gets the money direct deposited in his account. And we're very, very religious about that, because we absolutely want him playing bricklayer or brick delivery versus accountant. We want him doing what he needs to do because we can handle the other part of it. So, and the other thing is, these guys, a lot of them are mom and pop operations. They don't have an accounting system. We are their accounting system. So, we send it to them and tell them what job they did for, and we feel like it helps them out, and it allows them to do more jobs for us than they could do otherwise if they're having to chase a check.
Yeah. So, change gears here a little bit, and I wanted to talk about the impact of interest rates, and particularly since you started home building. So, I'm a student of economic history in the U.S., and if you look back, it seems like from the late 1700s through today, every 10 or 15 years, there was some economic calamity of some magnitude. And here most recently, we had, in the 80s, we had the savings and loan crisis and .com, then 9/11, we had Katrina and the Great Recession, and now COVID. And if you look at the graph of the Fed funds interest rate during that time, at 2008, it dropped down to 0 or thereabouts, and then only began to creep up in the last few years, a quarter point basis points at a time, 25 basis points at a time, to then get to COVID, and it plummets right back down to near 0. So it strikes me that, when you look at COVID, you think, oh my God, what is going to happen to this industry, that industry, that industry? But for home building, it's been a relatively good time, right? I mean, as far as home sale numbers that I've seen seem to be fairly positive.
Agreed. And, it's one of the things that shocked us. I mean, one of the old adages is man plans, God laughs. So, if you thought, hey, if you told me last year we're going to have 15% unemployment and home sales are going to spike, I'd be like, what are you smoking? No. And we're going to have a global pandemic and home prices are going to spike. And you'd be like, all right, that doesn't make any sense. But, what we've kind of seen is you start to see some of the younger people are still getting in the marketplace. And we've been under production of housing for about 10 years. So you're home building is not really leading this recession. It's more like 96 and 2000, where you have some other factor happening and home building won't get hit as bad. Now in 06, home building led that recession. We drug the economy into a ditch.
Right.
So hopefully we won't do that again for at least a generation, but it does feel a little different this time.
Well, it seems to me that a low interest rate is a home builder's best friend.
Agreed. But some of the best production numbers happening around 6% to 8% mortgage rates. So, they were selling houses when it was 13%. So, there is a demand. It definitely helps to have a lower interest rate, but it isn't the only thing.
Oh, no.
Household formations and somebody getting kicked out of a house into a, when the kids finally say, look, get out of the attic, it's time for you to go get a house.
Right.
Get a job, get a house. That helps us more than the low interest rate.
But it seems to really have a positive impact on that rent versus own decision process.
Agreed.
And so you can now look at a well-built home, it's energy efficient, and get into it cheaper than rent.
Agreed. But it's funny because we do apartments too. I have a new venture that we just started developing apartments under STOA. So my group is both why rent and why buy. They're arguing back and forth on social media, and the why buy people are saying you get a pool, you get a nice amenity center, you get a fitness center. Why would you want to cut the grass on the weekend? And then the why rent is saying, oh, you have a nice yard, you have space, it's yours. So they go back and forth, and we have these tags that they do for social media and everything like that. And I try to tell them, let's not spend right against each other. Let's not compete in the same subdivision, where we're both spending money.
Okay, we'll take a break right there, get a word from our sponsor, and we will be right back. GearTrain is a national testing, inspection, and audit company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry. So these guys provide the quarterly and annual inspections, preventive maintenance, inspections, and they do testing and audits of conveyor systems and automated equipment in big distribution facilities. They support the entrepreneur's journey, and we're proud to have them as a sponsor. You can find Gear Train online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Mr. Saun Sullivan, CEO of DSLD Homes. So as you have grown your business over the years, you begin to provide more services, as we mentioned, mortgage and title and insurance. And, of course, your sales team you then begin to develop in-house, right? And so, but these people have to be highly trained. I mean, to be effective sales personnel, how many of those are on your sales team, would you say?
Roughly 80 to 90, but I mean, I agree with you on the training part, but there's not a lot of new home people doing production. So most of them come outside the industry, and we're allowed to train them. And we have a wonderful sales director, Ms. Shirley Farmer, who really, at the time she started, I mean, we were in third grade compared to where she's taken the training and the salespeople now. I mean, they've really done a wonderful job of, making sure the salespeople understand the products, the systems, the processes, the mortgage, and everything like that. They've done a wonderful job of that.
Yeah, I imagine once you get up your numbers up enough, then you can make improvements across the system.
Agreed.
And get continuity and then cross-selling, as you mentioned. That's pretty powerful. What role does technology play in the homes? Like when you look at, lighting systems or air conditioning systems, and I know you're building lower price point entry homes or downsize home type. But do y'all have technology in your homes?
Yeah, they have some. I think the doorbells now with the text you, the alarm systems, a lot of that stuff. I was actually the last grade they gave a typewriter to, so I'm the least tech. So they give me something when they want to test it out. So I'd be lying if I barely can work a TV. So they do a bunch of that sort of stuff, and they politely ignore anything that I recommend on that, which is a very, very good thing.
That's fascinating. But things are constantly changing.
Yeah, they're constantly changing,
and,
in the mix. And a friend of mine the other day he gets a text anytime somebody shows up in front of his property, including joggers, which is a little bit creepy, that it'll text you in the thing. But it definitely makes teenage dating harder these days, than it used to be.
So you mentioned multifamily. It's one of the growth options for you. It's a different entity, right?
Yeah, different entity, different partners. And then we've got a title insurance company, not the title brokerage, but the title insurance company that we started relatively recently. And so, we branched out into some other things. And, over the years, we've branched out into some other things, some of them successful, some of them not successful, that we've closed at some point. But that's kind of the nature of the entrepreneurial thing. It's kind of like kids. If you have 8 kids, some of them will turn out good and some of them won't turn out good. So...
So, where do you see that part of your business going, the multifamily side?
Yeah, we're doing it across. We've got new deals in Pensacola. We've done about 1,200 units under construction right now in various stages. In fact, we have a grand opening in Lake Charles of a unit complex in about a month, and we'll see about that. So it should be interesting in this storm. But we've opened up one in Hammond, one in Ascension. We've got one on the West Bank of New Orleans. We've got one in Pensacola. So that's kind of been an interesting thing because both of the guys they worked with me at DSLD and both partners, and it's the new venture part where I don't have all the headaches, which is kind of nice. I'm not participating in all the headaches, so I can go over there and kind of listen to them, talk about all the problems that are happening, and I don't have to take much of it home. I'm more of an investor than that, but I could also say, hey, this is some of the things that I saw work and our experience, and, I can help provide the banking thing, but it is fun for the new venture to kind of watch it. It's kind of like watching a football game. It's a little bit more fun than playing it, when you're getting beat up and, beat to death. So,
well, I've seen images and renderings of those developments, those multifamily complexes, and they're really beautiful.
Agreed.
And looks like they have a lot of amenities and
Yeah, fitness centers and pools, and I mean, it just and you really can afford, if you're doing 300 units, you can afford to do some nice amenities, and it gets into the part. If I don't know that I would have left and left the area there. When you go out there and you got a fire pit and you got the dog park and you got all that sort of stuff. I mean, they're making it harder for us to steal those people into a new house, but we're still trying. But they're making it harder on us.
So growth for DSLD home builders. You mentioned the potential to open a 13th market, and can you shed any light on what any visions you have for the next 5 or 10 years as far as geographic reach?
Yeah, we'll probably expand some markets, and it really depends on where we think we are in the cycle, because the last thing we want to do is, growth for growth's sake. I mean, one of the things we always joke and say, we want to be as good as we are, big as we are good, and good as we are big. So we don't want to grow just the fact and create a bunch of issues out there. So we've looked at a few more markets, and but I mean, at some point the downturn's out there, and really kind of what houses, when the economy gets a flu, housing, when the economy gets a cold, housing gets the flu. So we tend to be more variable than the things. So our downturns are usually worse, and our upturns are usually worse. So we're very cognizant of not, building into a market where we think is overvalued, and we really don't see that now, being where everything's at. But there isn't any grand plan that we've got to be at 4,000 houses or 5,000, and we've got to be in 20 markets. We're just going to take it as it goes and just see what opportunities present themselves. And if it's a market we think we can get in and provide some value to the customers and possibly make some money, we'll do it. If it's someplace like Houston, where it's a little tougher, and we'll look much harder at that.
Well, it seems as if the Fed has done a good job with monetary policy, at least in the last 10 years, and a lot of lessons learned along the way, and never perfect, but they seem to have dialed it in pretty good to where they can keep the economy moving at some degree, even like we said, even during this striking, economic downturn with COVID.
Agreed, but I mean, one of the things that we do best when there's kind of blood in the streets. So you don't like the cycles, but the cycles are where all the money gets made. I mean, when everything's terrible and nobody wants a lot or nobody wants a house. I mean, that's almost the time when everybody's talking about houses. That's when you want to run. When everybody's not talking about houses, that's when you want to jump in. Right. So I mean, just being counter-cyclical to it. I mean, that's usually when a lot of the money gets made, and that's when the good deals get cut.
Yeah.
So. Especially in real estate development.
Well, it's interesting to have that experience and that insight, but to have the wherewithal to act on it is, what's really strong.
I agree.
So do you? I think I know the answer to this question, Saun, from what I've gathered from this talk so far. But would you entertain an acquisition in part of a growth plan?
I mean, we look at it. I mean, acquisitions are hard in home building because they're only as good as the people. So, I mean, we've had a lot more success growing organically and, finding the right people and growing in a market than buying somebody and trying to make that culture fit our culture.
Right.
So, I mean, I never say never, but, I think that would be kind of our second best option.
Yeah, it just strikes me that your operational superiority and your ability to grow geographically and organically would make an acquisition seem certainly less appealing.
Somebody retiring and have a good group of people, we probably would look at that, or somebody that wants to get back into land development like we originally did. We could provide a good opportunity there for somebody. But they so far in the cycle we haven't seen that yet.
Right. Okay, let's start to wrap this up, and I wanted to see if you could share with us any advice that you may have for a young entrepreneur who may be listening that thinks that home building sounds like a romantic and worthwhile venture.
I mean, it's as far as home building does provide. You going out there and you could see a product that somebody built. So I mean, it does provide some value. Somebody lives in it. It's not like we're selling some sort of fast food or something like that we don't think is necessarily healthy for everybody. I mean, everybody's got to live in a shelter unless they want to live in a tent or a cave. So it's one of the things. It does allow us to feel good when we see a community that we did. But as far as the new ventures and entrepreneurial, I mean, my advice would be persistent and not necessarily, when you start a business out, it doesn't necessarily lead exactly where you think. So you got to be open to that possibility. It's like when we started the apartments, I was thinking, hey, let's start the apartments. We'll get them leased up and let's sell them. And my partners were like, no, let's keep them and run them long term. It's like, all right, well, that sounds good too. So I mean, there is, and then the other thing is that you got about one out of three ventures that work. So you very rarely. I mean, failure in entrepreneur sometimes is not your fault. If we would have started this thing in 2005, we would have failed in 2008. So the timing has to be right in a lot of ways. So being persistent. I think Henry Ford went bankrupt 3 times before Ford Motor actually worked. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there of people that failed multiple times before they found that niche that finally fit. So that persistence is really important. So it's not only having the right idea, it's being at the right time in the right marketplace to execute that. Because I mean, a lot of these things, if you're too late or too soon, they really don't work. So it's not only the hard work, and some of the times, we've seen people not be incredibly hard working and manage to make a business work in spite of themselves, just because they were in the right place and right time. So the circumstances, it's kind of like the Stoics teach us, the circumstances, you just have to react to whatever comes your way and you try to make it a little better, but you can't control much. Right now I can't control interest rates and whether or not lumber is going to go up and that hurricane in the Gulf and all these sorts of things. What I can control is my attitude and how I react to it after the fact, but beforehand you can't. So I would say that, but it's just very rewarding to build a business, but it's also very rewarding to be as part of a business and build it up from the inside as well. So
absolutely,
that's I don't want to discount the people that get into a large organization and make it much better.
Absolutely, it can be a lot more exciting.
I agree,
for sure.
Agreed.
Saun, I've as you've talked about the things that are the DSLD model, the one pager contracts for your developers and the quick turnaround payment for your subcontractors and vendors, and your quality standards and your schedule adherence to that 43 days. Those are the things that I hear from you as being some of the most important things about your company. And what's interesting is that although this is the first time I've met you, I've heard people talk about you for a decade or more. And those are the very things that they say about you. So you've built your reputation so perfectly aligned with the principles of your business. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it definitely is.
So you are greatly respected in the industry, and it was an honor to talk to you, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate being part of here, and I hope wish all the future entrepreneurs well. So,
thank you, Saun.
Thanks, sir.
Saun Sullivan is next level businessman. What he and his partners have created at DSLD is incredibly impressive. I think their focus on their niche product and their core demographics of their clientele has been the key to their success. When you add in the standardization of their processes, the quality control, the energy efficiency, their adherence to schedule, they're just simply delivering a product better than their competition. I love how Saun talks about his employees as team members and how they've built this across the system, across the Southeast United States. DSLD can be found online at DSLDHomes.com. We thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Mainspring Companies. It can be reached online at mainspringcompanies.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at ask at nxtentrepreneur.com. You can subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can help support our podcasts by leaving a review on Apple Music. You can follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this episode with your family and friends. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. They can be reached at propelyourstory.com. Today's episode was produced by Daniel Sagona.